Because of the geometry of my original Culper volume, I don't really have much functional space inside my folly. I like it, I like the linearity, but it's pretty much a big hallway. So as I've mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and sort of extend some glassy space out in front. And I don't want to just sort of jam a box of glass on the front. I really want to try to relate to some of the other geometric conditions. So I'm going to take a duplicate of my boot figure and see if I can kind of make a piece of glass that also has some of that sort of gently bent geometry that I can use to construct this kind of glass object in front. So I've got these kind of key lines now that shape kind of an elegant little sort of space for the atrium. I'm in my top view, but I know that if I've drawn things in relationship to objects in the model, probably they're not all on the same plane. So if I want to kind of create a surface that I'm going to either extrude into a volume or use in some other way, maybe I extrude just the surface if I'm intending this as glass, that can be a nice way to sort of have a single line indicating a glass area. I need to get, in order for that to work, I need to get all of those on the same plane. So if I select them all and just out of curiosity go to the right, you can see that they're showing up in different planes. So I'm going to go ahead and move them all to the location associated with the top of that plane, just because that's where I may begin this kind of glass line anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then begin to isolate those pieces, join them together, and do some of my familiar commands. So I'm going to put the bottom, align bottom, and I'm going to set it to that floor. Okay, back to the top view. They're all together now, so I could begin to do things like fillet them together. I can begin to explode some of these unwanted pieces. I don't need the back of the boot. I don't need really the toe of the boot or the heel. But I do want to see if I can come up with a kind of elegant fillet here. I'm going to go ahead and allow this curve to complete the fillet, not as a curve but as a straight line. So let's sort of see how that works. So extend arcs by line, and I'm going to fillet that to that. And that kind of gave me a pretty interesting little closure. So I'm going to actually undo that because I need to take the radius off. So the radius is going to be 0. I'll need a crisp edge there. And I'm going to fillet this to that. So I moved my new constructed line back into its relationship to the Folly proto building mass, and then simply extruded that line into a surface and capped that surface. So now it's still a little box-like, it's got a flat roof, but I've got a sort of shaped geometry for this glass element. So now that I've tried to cap this volume, it's appearing as a solid again. So I'm just going to want to use the shell command to also turn this into a thin surface. And I want to make it much thinner than 1 foot. This is going to be representing glass. So I'm actually going to put in 1 inch so that it's pretty thin and will sort of appear as a thin volume. I first need to select the planes that I'm not going to shell. I'm going to select that face, back face that's touching the wall, that face, and also the bottom. If I hit enter, I have a volume here. You can just see that little bit of thickness there. And later I would want to add some mullions and other details to show the kind of structure of the glass. But let's just go ahead and put that back into place. So this is going to be the opening, the box I'm going to use to cut a hole in my shell. I need to kind of refine this a little bit. I don't really want the edges sort of falling off of this plane, and I need to move it down to the ground plane. So I'm just going to sort of work with that a little bit to get it in the right position. Alright, so I think maybe it's easiest done in perspective. You can also see, so this is just the box I'm going to use to trim a hole into my surface. I do want to turn off that clipping plane so that I can kind of tell a little bit better where I am. Alright, and let's boolean that little fellow. Enter. Now if I pull that away, I should have a nice hole in the wall. And now when I turn on my clipping plane and move it into space, you can start to see the relationship that I've created. I've cut that hole in the wall and I can see into this glassy space. Okay, it's much more like a building now. It's beginning to have some characteristics that are identifiable.